Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collingwood for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. I'm here to give a reaction review to episode 53. Season 2, episode 18, if you're watching on Tubi. So there is that, because I'm actually watching these on Tubi because it's simpler for me to watch them here and then pull out my Coffin box set, which is really, really large. But hey, if they ever take these off here, I got a backup plan, right? Oh my god! Oh my god! Francis Swan is the writer of this episode. Let's get going. So we see they had the camera pulled back. They move into the great house. As we see young David, a close up. We're in the kitchen. Here comes Victoria. She's gonna sit down next to David. Uh, she's gonna she's putting milk in her coffee. How dare you? No one puts. No, I don't. I don't use milk in coffee generally. Sorry. So David said he heard screaming. Vicky, I thought you were supposed to be asleep. He's like, I wasn't. I wasn't asleep, Vicky. He's like, it looked like something was chasing you. And her and Carolyn, he's beating. Again, this is the next. This is the next day. Literally the following morning from when Vicky and Carolyn saw that body last night. So you guys know. So we're on a new day in DS, and then days span episodes. Important thing to remember in DS, guys. David's like, I like it best in the. He's a, yeah, David says about Ghost that they like it best at night, and he asks, "Is that why you were screaming?" He's like, "David, I told you we didn't see a ghost." He's like, she's like, "Finish your breakfast. We're late already." He's like, "Why can't sleep? Afraid you have nightmares?" Vicky, it's like too much on my mind. David, like, why are you screaming? Like, Victoria, we have too. So David tells Victoria that he saw in her crystal ball that someone in Collinsport is going to try to kill her. And she's like, why would you say something like that? Yeah, so, uh, David, when you're dead, David to Victoria Winters, when you're dead, I won't even come to your funeral. And the close up of Victoria Winters' face is awesome. And there's the intro. There is the intro. Matthew Morgan does say something interesting in this episode, and it's not just admitting to pushing Bill Malloy's body back in back in the ocean. So yeah, Tara David's in this episode. Uh, Joan Bennett, Joel Carruthers, David Hennessy, and Alexander. So David's like, you're trying to take my mother's place. And she's like, that's not true. How could she take your mother's place? Wouldn't she have to marry your dad? That's David's so deliciously paranoid, and it's so good. Did one of the trees just move outside? This is supposed to be a set. It looked like one of the branches moved there for a second on the outside window, and it didn't look like anybody was standing there. Huh. I mean, it didn't move much, so maybe somebody just brushed up against it. But that's interesting. Somebody, David saying how him and his father argue all the time. Victoria, your father doesn't hate you, David. No, no, no. He hates him. He hates him. David and Roger. These early episodes butt a lot of heads, and so Victoria, I didn't know who my father was because he asked her, "Do you hate your dad?" She's like, "I don't know who my dad is." So David said, "Nobody believes what I say." And here comes Elizabeth. I believe what you say, David. Kiss on the cheek. Everyone's favorite aunt, and got the favorite aunt and head of the household. He asked Elizabeth what was on the bus. She's like, "I don't know." She's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Anyway, nothing for you to be concerned about. And and now David says his father left the house very, very early this morning. Elizabeth's like, "You see a lot." David sees all in his crystal ball. Ooh. His crystal ball is, what's its percentage rate? I'd say 50% right, 50% wrong. It has as much chance of being right as being wrong. Uh, it, David, if anybody hurt my Aunt Elizabeth, I'd kill them. David, they're all trying to hurt me. That's what he says. And Vicky's just like silent. Like, how do you change a paranoid kid's mind? And there's a pound on the door. Hey, you can see the boom mic, the shadow of the boom mic. They pull it away. And here comes David. He's walking from the kitchen to the drawing room door. And he opens it. It's Joe. Joe. Hey, David. David's like, "I'm home. What about Mrs. Stoddard?" She went out for a minute. Joe's coming to tell her he can't find. He's still no Bill Malloy, and Roger's not in the office. On the coming to report to the boss. That's a smart move. Let me tell you. I like how David Hennessy's just sitting on the staircase chilling. And Joe's like leaning against the railing, like talking to him, and you can see the back of Joe. I love how John Sedgwick shot this here, especially that scene. You get a close up of Joe now. Now you get a close up of David. We're going back and forth on the close ups. Really good job. Really good job by John Sedgwick here. Yeah, I really enjoyed the camera work just there. And I love how we do get a little bit of a tracking shot, David going from the kitchen to the drawing room doors to the doors in the foyer, and he opens the door and it's Joe. I talked about how the directors are sort of putting their own stamp on these episodes, and you can really see it too when you're watching the characters move around and the close-ups they're filming. Really great job. And now he's pulled the camera back. You see Joe, you see David, and Victoria walks out from the kitchen. And you have three people in one shot. Now there's a close up of Vicky. So David says he likes Burke. Joe doesn't like Burke. Vicky likes Burke, but she's not sure of him at times. so so Vicky invites Joe into the drawing room. Uh, David only went so far up the steps and then he comes right back down. He's gonna listen at the door. So so Joe says his boss, he ran in there from his boss, happened to take him past Collingwood. So he says Mr. Malloy wasn't there and Roger isn't at the office either. So two people who are supposed to be at the office aren't there. It's not good. We don't, well, we, the audience, the ones that they haven't, They haven't learned Matthew's little secret yet. By little, I mean pushing the body back in the water. Damn, mommy never to trust Matthew in my body. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say. So Vicky tells Joe they thought they saw a dead man, and then she tells him, well, it was seaweed. And he's like curious about this too. I like how Joel Carruthers is like sitting there. And this is a great shot by John Sedgwick too. We got the camera pulled back to the where you can see them, the character side of each Vicky and Joe, and then you see David standing. Now they're back to close up. Now they pull back to the sideways point of view. Really, really great job here. You guys gotta go watch these episodes. Go check them out. They're worth it. And then you get Elizabeth. You hear the door open and shut, and you see Elizabeth catch David. She scolds him here. She said, "You know better to listen to keyholes or doorways." Did they see a dead man, Elizabeth? Certainly not, she says. She said, what should be seen as your scorebook. So he's like, I'm going. And he bolts up the steps. Across the floor. Yeah, I can't mess with Aunt Elizabeth. Telling you, a woman's rough. And she asks about Bill Malloy and to Joe. She asks about Roger, too. He says, so she asks when Joe last saw him in the story. He says at the Blue Whale. Yeah, she just wants to know where he's living. Don't both have any ideas? And Joe's like, no. So she does ask, does anybody on the boat have any idea? And Joe says no. He said yesterday morning was the first time he ever missed. This morning's the second. So Bill Malloy has missed the boat sailing out, and Joe just feels this isn't something he would do. And I think Elizabeth suspects that too, even more now. Elizabeth is making a phone call. She's calling Roger, his secretary. Has Mr. Collins come in? Ask him to call me. I'm surprised she didn't say, call me right away. But I mean, it is Elizabeth. I mean, that woman, when she gives you an order. So she asked Joe, we will keep asking about Bill Malloy. Mr. He says, yeah. She's not necessarily asking if he will. She's asking basically, will you? You know, please keep asking. And he says, sure. You know, he's concerned too, legitimately. So, and Elizabeth knows Joe cares. So now she's going back to the phone. I think she's going to call the sheriff here, if I'm not mistaken. We'll see. One click. Operator. Yes, she calls it the sheriff. Yeah, George Patterson. We're gonna get an appearance from Dana Elker soon. Yeah, buddy. DS alum. Yeah, daddy. Now we're at David's room and we're learning about the rivers. Yep, the rivers. I like how you get the shot of the crystal ball, David going like this, and Vicky is reading the book now. You get a close up of David. He brings his arms down in the folded position. Again, and then we get a close up of Vicky. She said, "Were you listening downstairs?" And David, she's like, "David, you were listening." So she knows David was listening at the door now today. Uh, I didn't do it on purpose. But Vicky's like, one day you want to hear something you didn't want to. It's a very bad habit. David keeps switching the subject from the rivers to about the man that was potentially dead, and Vicky's explaining to him, "We thought we saw a man, but it was a seaweed. It was a seaweed." So and now she's like, "I don't want to discuss it no more." I mean, could you imagine seeing something in the dark and you think it's a body? No, it was a body, but David asked her how she knew it was seaweed, and she says no. See, Matthew went down. Look, I'm saying seaweed. I was watching and reacting. But Matthew went down and looked. That's what she tells David. That's how they knew it was seaweed. David, did Matthew know who the dead man was? And Vicky said, David already told you it wasn't a dead man. What was the name of the longest river? The Missouri. George, don't misunderstand. I don't think anything's happened to him. You just check the hospitals. So, I mean, Elizabeth is this worried about him. Why shouldn't she be? The man she has trusted with her boats is not around, and there's a knock on the door. It's going to be Joe again with Carolyn's watch. Yeah, I forgot to mention that Elizabeth and Vicky both tell Joe about the watch. Carolyn losing the watch. Um, he said it was 100 yards from the house. The watch. That's a good distance. 100 length of a football field, huh? So now Joe leaves for good after giving Elizabeth Carolyn's watch that he found. I like that he said 100 yards from the house. That is really, really. That's a imagine. Yeah, it was 100 yards from my house. And she's like, "Hello, is my brother coming yet?" She's calling. She's calling. I'm at the office. She's like, she's like, she asks if there's been inquiries about Mr. Malloy, and she goes, "So here's all Elizabeth. Just tell him that Mr. Malloy is out of town on business. So no, she doesn't know when she'll be back." I mean, it isn't necessarily a lie. Maybe Elizabeth feels he did leave town to do some business. Who knows? To her, she's trying to. She has hope that he's alive. I mean, that's what she's keeping in her mind. And now you get Vicky reading a book about the rivers. She's got the book open behind David. She's walking behind him. There's David sitting in a chair with his arms folded on the desk. He turns his arm up like this, and he hits the table. Hits the table. And David said it was probably Mr. Malloy. And Vicky's like thinking about that for a minute. Um, and here comes Matthew. I love when we get the back of Third David. He knocks on the door, the drawing room door, and he walks in. He said, "Mr. Collins wanted me early." Mr. Collins with he asks to walk along the rocks. So he wants to make sure what the young lady's clown wasn't there, and Matthew says it wasn't. Now, watch what Elizabeth does here is really interesting. He said, "Darker than mist." So Matthew says he pointed out all the seaweed to Mr. Collins. And he said, "If I was you, Miss Daughter, I'd ask the daughter to stay away from that Widow's Hill." Favorite place of Carolyn's ever since she was a kid, Widow's Hill. Here we go. I know this. So Matthew Morgan says there's another way of telling Josette's story. Maybe she didn't jump of her own free will. Now, I'm going to get back to this when this episode ends, but might have been might have been drawn there by unnatural forces out of Matthew Morgan's mouth. And Elizabeth says that's not true, and you know. And Vicky to David, we're back in David's room. For last time, there was no dead man. David says his father killed Bill Malloy. And David says, "Is it a lie to tell the truth?" So the crystal ball. He says the crystal ball, which again the crystal ball's wrong. So it was Matthew. I mean, Matthew makes himself a suspect officially, more so in this episode too, because what he's going to confess to. He's going to confess to pushing the body of Bill Malloy back in the water. Officially, this is the episode where Matthew Morgan makes himself a suspect. Officially. Because, I mean, we could say we know he pushed the body in, but none of the characters did. Now the characters are going to know about it. So Vicky tells David, you know what kind of trouble you get your father into making a murder accusation, basically. And David, it would suit me just fine. Oh, I'm just music. So here's Elizabeth talking to Matthew in his room. How long have you worked for me? He said about 18 years. For that, I worked for your father on the boats. You worked for Jameson? Elizabeth said, you never told me a deliberate lie. So, well, you tell me what was saw. He said, you chose your words. She goes, you chose your words carefully. Took one end and then properly put. There was nothing there. Turn trip there. There was something when we first went down. Matthew was. What was Carolyn Miss Winters said it was? It was a drowned man. And Vicky, or Elizabeth's not happy. He said he pushed the body back to water, watched the waves carried out to sea. You know who it was? He's like, yeah. It was Bill Malloy, and Elizabeth has the. She's like, how could you do such a thing? She's so shocked. She's so upset. I love how she power walks over to the phone and calls George Patterson. Hello, George. You can stop your search for Bill Malloy. I know where he is. And that's the end of this episode too. Oh my god. Oh my god. Great episode. I'm going to touch upon what Matthew Morgan said. Again, Francis Swan wrote this episode, and I get that they have to shout out these episodes as they were, back in that day. But the fact that they have Matthew Morgan say that is, I put on Facebook, I think there's something to Matthew Morgan saying this. I wish there were. I can't prove that, but I do think it's interesting that you have that put in right here at episode 53. And it's by a guy who's been working at Collinwood for the past 18 years. It's really, really interesting. Yeah, episode 54, we're gonna get the physical introduction of one Sheriff George Patterson as he questions Matthew. Really, really fun episode 53 is. It's a bit filler, but I do like what they do here. We have a little intrigue of Josette by Matthew by saying, "Oh, what if she didn't jump of her own free will?" That's another way of telling it. We also get the confession from Matthew, and I would really love the interaction we get with the camera work we get from John Sedgwick here and Dan Curtis Productions. The tracking shot of David, the scene where David Hennessy's David Collins is just chilling on the staircase, and the interaction between him and Joe. And I love this. I especially love the sideways shot of the drawing room, how they pull that camera back, but they're not afraid to do the close-ups either when it needed. Great, great job. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. Have a good night.